Thank you, Marcia, so much. Thank you to Manai and Alexandra. It's an honor to read with you. If you'll notice, the poets have gotten increasingly shorter and older, as it's not your television set. Don't try to adjust. I was thinking about the houses that we grow up in, et cetera. A couple years ago, my husband and I went back to Akron, Ohio, where I grew up. And the house that I grew up in was changing hands. So the new owners some stuff was moved in, but it was only the beginning. And so Phil and I walked up to the front door, knocked to see if anyone was home. No one was. And I saw this bronze plaque that I'd completely forgotten about on our front door. And it said Dr. Charles M. Baressi and, Mary Lenore Baressi. And I don't even know where that thing came from. Somebody gave it to my dad. It always seemed a little like a joke to me in some ways, but I'm like, oh, Phil, we've got to go get a screwdriver and take that bronze thing off of the door. Who cares about that? I mean, I got to take that. And so we actually drove to a Target not too far away, got a little screwdriver, and came back, and the damn guy who'd bought the house was there. And he said, so I knocked and I said hi and I introduced myself and I said, I said, this is kind of weird, but I'd love to take this little plaque, And he goes, no, we love that. He said, it makes it like a historic home, And I was like, yeah, it's my history, dude, Anyway, that's neither here nor there, right? But you will hear my parents appear in this first couple of poems. Why I am a poet. My mother said, yaketa, 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 and quacked her hand at me because I was a real talker. My father called the ass flap of a roast chicken the Pope's nose. Does the Pope shit in the woods, he'd say, if I asked a stupid question, or cork it for similar reasons. My mother said Jesus, Mary, and Joseph at least 10 times a day. She called my dad's sociology professor friends pseudo intellectuals. From the couch, she said, I'm napping, hand covering her eyes when I came home from school. My dad said us kids were mongrels, not real Italians. If we hadn't brushed our teeth, my dad would say our breath could knock a buzzard off a fertilizer wagon. My mom would take showers only when we were at school or asleep. Her secret body. How had we come from it? When she fought with my dad, she cried. At the dinner table, she often announced, I'm going to cry, then cried. Were we excused? No. You'd make St. Francis kick a dog, my father said to any one of us. Not unkindly, a little odd, prelude to a bear hug. On summer vacations in the RV we all despised, my dad would say, this is the life, eh, kid? Then pinch our knees. If I asked my mom for a smocked peasant dress from Click or fake suede platform shoes from Baker's, she'd say, butter wouldn't melt in your mouth. When our dog Hershey escaped her backyard chain, came home limping, my dad said, get me a shovel. A bullet only costs 30 cents. If one of us kids sassed her, my mother said, the devil, you say. Lots of people told my mother she looked like Patricia Neal in HUD when all those cows had to be shot in the temple and Paul Newman tried to rape her good-naturedly. Not too long after Neal's nervous breakdown, but before 3 hemorrhagic strokes made her nicotine growl even more captivating. Once she learned how to speak again, of course. Who wants their clock cleaned? My dad shouted rhetorically downstairs if Tom and Jerry had tried to kill each other a little too early on a Saturday morning. But when he was really, really angry, he'd ball his fists up and go nose to nose with one of my growing brothers. You mess with the bull, you get the horns. In a pig's eye, my mom would say if she thought I was unofficially bullshitting her, which was practically every day. Or when she felt that particular inexhaustibly Irish form of staggering grievance against the fate that made us, all 7 of us eventually, gods of ancient, inescapable recrimination, i.e. family, she'd say, "The back of my hand to you," and then she'd slap me. I honestly think they would love that poem. So they're not around anymore, but I do think they would love it. Rediscovering Catholicism. I was always taught that a priest puts his pants on one tentacle at a time. I wasn't taught that. History of lucky strikes back of the sacristy. Any little boy could smell that. I was also always never taught that if I reached into a priest's chest and open booked his yellow lungs, they'd stand up on their own, stiff as leather missilettes. Lizards exist in every state of the Union. Why the surprise when a frozen skink falls out of an elm tree onto our bare heads at the first cold snap? A cassock is not a hassock. Do not relax around a priest, the weirdest, neediest kid in any religion class. No one had to teach us to give a wide berth to that particular tickle fight. Pacing the recess perimeter in case we played Red Rover, his catching game for favorites. 1 minute preening that he'd heard every dirty confession a kid could give in that dark disclosing box, feel free. The next, throwing a desk. Don't you dare test me, you little snots. Whiskey aftershave, white scraped, cystic face, pickpocket moon in broad daylight. An old Monsignor trembling and kissing a compulsory rosary, the color of his liver spots. What had he dismissed? Should I have pitied priests? I wasn't taught that. St. Peter was hung like a fishing lure upside down to net us Catholics for the ages, and it worked. Everyone I knew had at least 2 kid brothers related by the rhythm method, which made bad timing a crappy sixth sacrament for one-paycheck families. And every family was a one-paycheck family. Have you ever looked up at the exact moment a meteorite of changing flames knifes a spectacular channel, a birth canal right through the sky? And in that brief moment before the thing cauterizes the wound it's made in the dark and disappears, did you ever feel that the story of who and what you are might rightly be called exalted? Miraculous? I did last year. Later, when I turned on the TV, it had been downgraded to Chinese space junk. Priests had it made once. Now they're dwindling, a drooling, inbred lot. The countdown has begun. Listen, I'll tell my grandson someday. Every time a priest raises his hands to bless you, a cuckoo clock crows 3 times. And somewhere an old nun stirs in her sleep, smiling. Thank you. I'm going to read a couple of poems. I'm working on a series of poems about the Exide technologies, contamination of 7 neighborhoods in Los Angeles. Exide Technologies was a lead battery acid smelting plant, which means they melted down batteries, thousands upon thousands of batteries, in order to make new batteries, and completely contaminated a 1.7 mile radius around the plant. The EPA was watching Exide from 1996 to when they finally closed in 2014. I became interested in this when I was reading some articles about it online. This poem is called Given To, and the little epigraph is this. It's a quotation from the LA Times. Exide battery recycling plant contaminates 10,000 homes in poorest Los Angeles neighborhoods. Nets, no jail time. If you are lucky in this life, only 2 or 3 people will hate you for cause. Given to leukemia, asthma, lung cancer, developmental delays, certainly a sweeping category. Given to the sensation of falling while seated or on landings, nosebleeds, soft bones, premonitions, sores on the tongue. On the roof of the mouth, a membranous caul or grit skin, damage as it relates to the pleasure of distinguishing sweet from sour. Think of your front yard as a dirty needle. Think of your kid as an addict in her sandbox. Brain cancer, renal leakage, across the viscous gel of the eye, a faint floating illegible scrawl, untranslatable as vision. Edema, joint pain, reading delays, blood cancer, Metz to the bone. Peripheral distortions, who or what is almost seen at the small corners requires guesswork. Higher infant mortality rates consistent with per capita income. Correlation is not causation, Exide Technology states for the deposition given to. Smelting is a 19th century word involving tremendous heat and commerce. It goes far back. Today, a car battery smelter remakes what can be used to represent a savings. But Chinese factories are where the real margins hold. Everything else is byproduct. Lead dust in the groundwater, arsenic spores, whiff of tar gas in remedial classrooms exceeding 80 parts per million. And the light vertical static of industrial concern, fidelis et mortem. 285 homes cleaned so far. Message in the marrow: you are a vanquished enterprise. A machine may be complex or simple, but it goes. In Los Angeles, we love our cars. So 10,000 homes have been affected. Only 300 homes have been remediated so far in terms of the front lawn, the back lawn, even the kind of cleaning it would take inside a house to ensure that there's no longer any lead or arsenic present. Oh, yeah.
This is slipping.
Oh.
Okay. Sorry.
That is all right. And thank you so much. Thank you so much to Marcia and Phil for inviting me here. They have been such supporters of my work from way back, and I owe them so much. Thank you so much. And thank you, and God bless you to Jackson Wheeler, who was just a beautiful person and a poetic force to contend with, and he was just, anyway. Love you, Jackson. This is called East LA Public Hearing Opening Statement. I wanted to write a poem that was about as sardonic as I could be about transparency, if you will. East LA Public Hearing Opening Statement. Attention, the light vertical static of industrial concern is coughing for effect. Ladies, gentlemen, into the microphone. To accommodate affected citizens, testimonies must be kept to 180 seconds per. Patience is counseled. Word or whimper strikes the malleus bone's tympanic overlay, vibrating the civic body to be felt as shame. Trust the process. You have your whole lives to die. In the morgue drawer, pathos aside, poisoner and poisoned look the same. For the record, we are taking ownership of our capitulations. We regret the lead contamination of a 1.7-mile radius of our corporate dignity, spent at levels largely unseen now or since, on the shitty aftertaste of metal in your mouths. Your extravagant tumors and headaches bore us. Your fissures, seizures, hardbound lugs, infertility, bleeding gums, and encephalopathy. Memory loss, we are as indifferent to your frustration as we are to the yellow mucus in your daughter's diaper. For the record, we lack conviction that your 12-year-old son would have learned to read any sooner. Still, it is rush hour in the atmosphere. The season of figs is over, and the poor are gang-related. Our transparency is natural, like the rain that grows on trees. For 30 years, lead dust seeped from the deplorable conditions of our tremendous concern, our Los Angeles manufacturing boom, into the substrate, aquifer, and legible breathing air of the 7, rather forgive me, unremarkable neighborhoods. marked here in brown and black on the map just over my head and behind me. Race has nothing to do with it. In 1996, the EPA took a Valium, cried itself to sleep, and no one is really the wiser. We regret that we were an honest day's lead-acid battery smelter, where hundreds of you worked and who in return received a paycheck and cashed it. Bought homes? We are sorry about your home's depreciation. Even Money says we won't serve any jail time. As for fines, we've tendered millions to the Department of Debulking and Ectopic Pregnancies, to the Department of Soft Bones, to the Department of Mineralized Tissue, to the Department of Confusion, Memory Loss, and Restorative Sincerity. If you are one of the lucky ones, we may appear unannounced at your home with a diversionary backhoe, 24 men in sterile Chernobyl gear, to turn the dirt of your flower beds over by a depth of 5 feet, which for the record does little earthly good. Headline in the Times, burying the lead lead. Clearly, our sense of irony remains transparent. In conclusion, we deeply regret our regret. It is big of us. We are suffering. We ask you to think before your testimonies of our suffering. Now then, before we hear from the poisoned citizenry, I do ask you to close your eyes for a guided meditation. A 4-year-old child sits on the lawn in front of his parents' bungalow in Maywood, pretending his overturned tricycle makes cotton candy just by turning the pedals. Petals and fistfuls of torn grass. A red tricycle, we should add. I think I had a different last line for that in another, that's new and I've got writing on it. Anyway, I'm having last line regret. This is the title poem from the book that came out last year. Oops, sorry, I'm juggling there. What we did while we made more guns. I'm reading from paper because it's bigger. It's just easier to read from it. Which is not to say that the print is too small in this book. I'm just, just teasing. All right. All right. What we did while we made more guns. Prayed, dug mass graves, raped the daughters of the enemy who, in their terror, turned back into swans. Placed war orphans in loving homes, pinned honorifics to field dress shadows, recruited homme noir to fill empty jail cells, and swans with their coruscating metallic cries to lend comic grace to memorial fountains. The exchange of gifts, the games, the tilts, the jousts, the masks proceeded without irony. The year's cotillion was elegantly attended by debutantes in a glowing orange and red silk tent before an amputated audience of officers, some crying, some propped on tiny keepsake pillows. We prayed for peace through victory, sang the old hymns, it's me, it's me, it's me, O Lord. Planted winter wheat, let it rot. The alcohol smells sweet and scouring. Planted corn, ate the mice that overran the field instead, blood in small hides in our cupped hands. And purpose, our hair dripping as though we had just stepped from a bath with our beloved. The dead we have with us always. Livestock were fed broken chocolate bars to fatten provisions quickly. Guts ruined. They bellowed all night, but we were sleeping only 2 or 3 hours now. There was so much to do. Tunnels to torch, missile silos to polish with our hair. Cops and students of political science orated like gods in parking lots, decorated with thousands of yellow ribbons. Red searchlights scalded the possible flight paths of our urgency. Everyone useful, finally. Everyone making corrections to sacrifice, beauty to conviction. Paying prisoners of war 1 bucket of water for the truth, 2 if it wasn't any good. Thank you. This is LAPD. That's a persona poem, I guess you could say, in the collective voice of the LAPD. We are waylaid and slaughtered for our beauty. We rattle palm fronds, siren the sick limb in any airless night, cut it off. We kick high, correct clocks and the poor on the stoop in their Nike shower shoes, cursing intractabilities. A still boy who, muttering to himself all morning, paced the center divide, palsied, rope burned by exhaust, now cooperates fully at our feet. We are the fuck that matters. We protect sightlines, we serve sightlines. Here lies. We jack conviction, smile. Consent decree. All inconsolable people look the same. Wrung hair, eaten face, tears. Consent decree. All inconsolable people sound the same. Like supernatural whale cries off the shiftless Pacific, plying April's migration routes north. Why do they home here? Instinct, why? If not to save themselves and blue the air and the hour of kick down doors and the body camera turns us on. If only it showed our faces, we are that beautiful. We afterward, Los Angeles. We marry a jury of our peers, Your Honor. Even when he walked backwards, then kneeled as instructed, with his hands on the back of his head as instructed, and lying prone as instructed, kept his hands on the back of his head as instructed, face eating the burning tar. I was afraid as instructed for my life. No one is perfect here. We jack the need that fucks us up. We bruise wrists, we kick drink, one wife, one husband at a time. We are transparent. Our faces no longer appear in the mirrors that shave us or put on our makeup. Call us carefully. Red sirens, skin night's feedback loop. A service revolver is only as good as its lawyer. In San Pedro, Crenshaw, Montecito Heights, in the valley of the shadow of the Deathward Mall and the all-night plasma drop-in center, we trouble slaughter. We carry your eviction. We are on your hands. Let it be on your head, our beauty, when we come riding, towing the line. I'm just going to read one more poem from the book that came out before Guns, which is American Fanatics. I thought I would bring us back around full circle to Catholicism. This poem is called "It Is Good to Be Amongst Catholics Again." And it's dedicated to my first poetry writing professor, who's this amazing poet, Elton Glaser. I was just the luckiest person in the world to go to the University of Akron, where my dad taught. We all got to go for free, by the way. We kind of joke, and two of us got masters there, so we kind of joke that there's a Baressi rule. Probably they don't let kids go for free anymore, of the professors who teach there, or there's a limit. But I had this amazing first poetry writing professor, and he changed my life. And when people, see him at AWP or something like that, they're like, "Oh, you're the one who changed Dorothy's life." So this is Elton, but this is for Elton Glaser, but this is a poem about swearing, and I apologize for the swearing that I did just in that last poem, and I apologize to those in the front row, and to their guardians. I apologize about that, but we loved, I'm sorry, there's a lot of swearing in this one too. Maybe I should change my mind. You know what? I'm changing my mind. I can't do it now after saying that. No, you know what? I'm going elsewhere in your honor and thank you, and I dedicate this poem to you. That other poem, it's not that good. It's not that good. It's just about the fact that somebody told me once, I don't know why, I didn't know this until later in life. Somebody said, well, Catholic kids are the worst. They swear like crazy. And I'm like, God, you're right. We did swear like crazy. I don't know why. It took such pleasure in it growing up. I don't know. But I could be wrong about that. Maybe. Am I wrong? All right, but this is something else. This is called Something in the House Was Beeping, which I think most people can relate to. And maybe the other thing too, but that's all right, whatever. All right, something in the house was beeping. Thank you for your ignorance, it said. On my orders, my husband dismantled the coffee maker. I toppled boxes of old insurance forms. I threw cotton sundresses over my shoulder like salt for summer's spilled luck. Am I getting warmer? No, it said. Pre, post, and cold, beep, beep from the utility knife drawer or secretest pleats of the linen closet. From smoke alarms, I pulled perfectly good batteries. Batteries with something still left to contribute. The clock radio wore a fright wig of wires when I was finished with it. Meanwhile, dusk pulled night's covers up to its chin. Ants, oblivious, divvied up the season and carried it off crumb by dumb crumb, while the owl that last spring aspired to eat our puppy sat like a Buddha on the high-speed cable line, contemplating what was by then 2 beeps. One throbbing murder in my new dental work, and the other one distant and forlorn as my lost First Communion watch. Do I drink too much red wine in the evenings? Will I ever be capable of genuine closeness with anyone? I'm a mother, by the way. That's the terrible thing to put in a poem, but you know what I'm saying, right? If you doubt yourself, yeah, right. A beep is a germ, a wink, a ticking intimacy, an auditory pill to take for nerves if you can take it, nerves ending and nerves beginning all over again. Where are you? I shouted at the air. I'm in the backyard, my husband called. You should see the stars. A truck in my brain backed up, beeping. My sandbag heart banged against the upright bars. I was in this alone, trying to prop open my son's PlayStation 2 with a pair of toenail clippers. My handsome son, who no longer bothered to hide his face when he rolled his eyes at me. What specialist, what exterminator could I call this late to solve the problem of my authority over nothing? What would it cost me? Then, nothing. Silence. Complex. Baffling. As though a once bright beast, a shaggy, munificent god had turned a cold shoulder to the whole lousy property, and I turned 60. Thank you very much.